Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. What up, what up, what up? Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I stream Monday through Friday on YouTube, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and on Rumble, where we do deep dives into the woke insanity and where it all comes from. The real stuff, not the fake stuff like you see on Libs of TikTok that is really only created for TikTok. Not real. Do people understand that? Like, side note. Do people understand that the vast majority of the stuff that you see coming out of Libs of TikTok is just created to get social media clout? Like, it's like you've got these alleged non-binary teachers doing these videos about all the crazy things they're doing in their classroom, and they're putting them on TikTok for social media clout. And it's like, I understand it's sexy. I understand it's cringe. I understand it meets the attention span level that most people have. I don't know, man. For my money, though, it reeks of inauthenticity, or perhaps that's just because I know, based on spending the last 3 years watching thousands and thousands of hours of their real world training, that what they are actually doing and how they're actually indoctrinating your kids is so much more insidious and so much more dangerous than anything that you see on Libs of TikTok. And that's what we do on this channel. We watch it. We watch the full long form training so that we can see for ourselves with primary source documentation, which in my world is really the only documentation that matters. We want to see for ourselves what's going on and evaluate what we think of it. Stony baloney. I just pulled my daughter out of primary public school last week. Oh my, Stony, you're turning me on already. We are not even 5 minutes into the stream, and I'm like, glorious. Glorious. Congratulations, Stony Baloney, on that. Thank you, Naruto, for the super chat. Socialism Saturday hit home for me this weekend. I'm not happy. What'd you do? Why'd you do this to me, Carlin? Listen, man. Just because your conservative influencers want to hide from you what's actually going on in the world, they don't want you to see it. Because here's the thing. Do you guys remember about a month ago when I explained to you why I will never be on trigonometry again? I was on trigonometry when I was being lifted up by the conservative right as being the poster child of the Democrat that went to the Trump rally and then left the left. And they loved me when I was saying all the things they wanted me to say and doing the right talking points. And they could lift me up as this like mythological being of like, oh my God, we got a Democrat, guys. But do you guys remember I told you about a month ago that I would never be on trigonometry again? Because they might claim to care about this stuff, but they really, really don't. Anyway, I swear it has to do with this. So, do you guys know how I spend basically all my time looking into the left and investigating the left and finding all this real world content and all that stuff? Well, about a month ago, a member of my community got into like the trigonometry like stream or whatever. And they asked them, they were like, why don't you have Carlin on your show? And Konstantin Kisin was like, well, Carlin just fights too much on Twitter. Now, of course, most of the time the people I'm fighting with are socialists, but let that not sway you, right? The reason I bring this up is that after my community member got on their stream and said that, and then Konstantin Kisin was like, well, we are not going to have her on because all she does is fight on Twitter. I reached out to Konstantin directly because he used to follow me on Twitter. And I was like, Konstantin, do you actually know what I'm working on like day to day? And I was so nice about it. I was so polite. And I gave him the list of things that I'd covered in like the last year, like my best of list. Anyway, I told you guys about that a month ago. And of course, Konstantin, when I showed him what I was working on, didn't acknowledge it, didn't even look at it. And then I checked back because I saw him tweet something crazy yesterday. Like he tweeted like, this is proof that we are winning and we are bringing down the DEI establishment. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, Konstantin? You are not winning and you are smart enough to know that you're not winning. But the reason I bring this up is I checked back, and because I had gently reached out to Konstantin Kisin to say, do you want to take a look at what I've actually been working on? He unfollowed me on Twitter. And I was like, oh, you know what, man, this is emblematic of this question that Naruto has. This is emblematic of this. Because the trigonometry guys, Konstantin Kisin wants to hold himself up as the classical liberal that is just fighting this evil ideology. He doesn't even understand what he's fighting. And he can fall back on, my parents were raised in a Soviet environment, in a communist environment, and look at all the bad things that happened to my family because my parents were raised in a communist environment. Then why the fuck doesn't he actually care to find out what's going on in the real world? Truly. Why is Konstantin Kisin so offended at what I'm doing? And that goes right directly back to this. Because those influencers, the failed comedians, the failed actors, that they couldn't make it in the field they wanted to make it in, and so they became political influencers instead. They don't want you to know what's really happening, because what's really happening is really effing scary. And if they showed you my work, if they showed you what was really happening, they would have to admit how much they missed. And they would have to admit how much they lied to their audiences. And they would have to admit how much they don't have any goddamn clue of what is actually going on in the real world. And it's a lot easier to go on their platform and be like, we're winning, we're winning, we're winning, we're bringing down the DEI establishment. Most of them don't even know what equity means. Really think about that for a second. Konstantin Kisin wants to go on, we're bringing down DEI. Chris Rufo wants to go on, we're bringing down DEI. Rufo damn well fucking knows better too. They're just doing it to position themselves as the saviors. Give us all your money. We are your saviors. We will save you from the evil DEI. We won't even define for you what it is. We won't show you how equity is actually being introduced to people. We won't clearly delineate to you what it means. But we swear, just pay our bills, just put money in our pockets, buy our books, give to our podcast. We swear we're going to save you. We're winning, we're winning, we're winning. So if you come here, you're going to get the real shit. And the real shit is much crazier than most people can ever dare dream. And we're going to look at some of that real stuff today, guys. Welcome to the cult. Mount the like button for me if you would be so kind. There is, as always, a shocking disparity between the number of people watching right now and the number of people who've mounted that like button for me. Let me show you what we're watching today. So last week, oh, hang on, I got another stupid chat. Stony Baloney, famous last words. Thank you, Stony Baloney. Appreciate it. So last week, we started to delve into this this treasure trove of videos that I found on the University of Minnesota. That's kind of like a Minnesotan accent, isn't it? I think that's pretty close. Last week, we started delving into this treasure trove of videos that I found on the University of Minnesota website, which means that this is all taxpayer-funded training because the University of Minnesota is a public institution, which means it takes public dollars. This is a unit within the Office of Equity and Diversity. By the way, can we just prove that my chat is smarter than trigonometry's chat? When I say equity, what is the definition of equity? Can you guys just prove how much smarter that you are than trigonometry's followers or any of these other people who watch the influencers who don't actually define these terms from them and teach them what it means? Can you guys define equity for me? Equality of outcomes, equal outcomes. Keep going. Keep going. What does it mean? Beyond equality of outcomes, what does equality of outcomes mean? Exactly. Reagan got it. Equality of outcomes means socialism. Equality of outcomes means socialism. It means sameness. Equity is sameness. Equity equals equality of outcomes. That means communism. Everyone has the same outcome. Alexis, removing private property. Yep, that's very, very true. It is I wouldn't say it's the opposite of equality, but it's definitely very different than equality. Equity means we are all comrades. Equity means collectivism. Guys, can equity and capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, exist at the same time? Can a land built on equity exist in a land built on capitalism, which is private property ownership? No. No. Equity and capitalism cannot exist at the same time because equity is all about individualism and strike that, reverse it. Capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, is all about individualism and meritocracy. Individualism and meritocracy cannot exist in an environment built on equity. All right, last pop quiz, just to really hammer home that my chat is so much smarter than trigonometry's chat any day of the week. When we see the term queer on the University of Minnesota's website, what does queer mean? Can you please define queer for me, please? Pretty, please. Let's see how many times I can say please in one sentence. Naruto says conservative influencers would have to admit their entire careers have been pointless. Well, they haven't been pointless, Naruto. They've made a lot of money being failed comedians and failed actors that made their way into the political space and said all the nice words so they could fill their pockets by being entertainers. So it wasn't meaningless. They made a lot of money from it. Queer means Marxism. Queer means Marxism. Queer means disrupting the norm. Queer is to go against the norm. Bot. Queer is against the norm, against capitalism, against the system. Queer is anti-normative. Queer is the rejection of the normal. Queer means not normal. Queer means deviating from the norm. Nick, great answer. Queer is a far left political ideology that has nothing to do with sexuality at all. Queer is a far left political ideology that goes against the normal. Queer is against the gender binary and normal gender roles. Queer is the active abolishment of normativity. Queer is the opposite of normality, thus allowing to move towards everyone can become a cog in the Marxist machine. Queer is a left political agenda to go against the norm. Anyone can be queer. Straight cisgendered white men can be queer too, because all they need to do is declare it. Queer is an ideology that seeks to abolish all normative structures to abolish private property. Queer is anything going against normal in a capitalism system. Queer is about breaking away from the norm and is hidden Marxism. Look at how good you guys are. Look at how good you guys are. Well done. Everyone give themselves a hand. Queer is subversion of our capitalist system that is built on private property ownership. All right. So today we are watching a presentation from Queer X, which is within the Office of Equity and Diversity at the University of Minnesota. And I'm actually really excited about this. We are watching a presentation about non-monogamous relationships. And you can see this is literally on their website, non-monogamous relationships. So congratulations, taxpayers in Minnesota. You are paying for your university system to teach students about non-monogamous relationships. Now, follow-up question. Why do queer Marxists embrace non-monogamous relationships? Why are they using university systems to push non-monogamous relationships? What value does that have when we're thinking about Marxism and the Cultural Revolution in America? Why are they using university resources to push non-monogamous relationships? What does that have to do with queer? You guys are so good. This disrupts the nuclear family because it upholds capitalism, because they want to abolish the nuclear family. Queer means anti-capitalist by attacking the family and heteronormativity. Non-monogamous relationships attack the nuclear family. It's about dismantling the gender binary and the nuclear family. Non-monogamy hurts the nuclear family, thus pushing towards the abolition of the family. Some might also say they're trying to queer the nuclear family, to disrupt the nuclear family. Monogamy is a colonialist capitalist structure for nuclear family, or for families. Yep. It disrupts the system of capitalism by attacking the nuclear family to abolish the nuclear family, thus abolishing private property. Queer attacks all normative relationships. And by the way, guys, that's not just heterosexual relationships, right? If we're talking about heteronormativity, that's about heterosexual relationships, but they also have a word called homonormativity, which is about the gays assimilating to heteronormativity, and they consider homonormativity, which is gay people getting married and buying a house and having kids and a dog and a white picket fence and all that. They consider homonormativity to be just as bad as heteronormativity. So this is not just about heterosexual relationships. Well done. So that's what we're watching today, guys. It is about 20 minutes. No, it's about half an hour long. So it's a shorter video, but that's okay. It's okay that it's a shorter video because this is Monday. And on Mondays, I have my community supporter call at 7 p.m. So we usually do a little bit of a shorter stream on Monday. And that is one of the perks you get when you sign up as a supporter on my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. I didn't want to do that. You can head over to my Substack. Please make sure you're at least subscribed for free. But if you want to get the most out of it and support the work I'm doing, because I'm completely 100% funded by you, you can sign up for a subscription for $8 a month or $80 a year. All of that helps fund the work I'm doing, and I really do appreciate it. Now, if you are already a supporter, what I want you to do is to go to this fancy little Unwoke Roundup email here, right here, where you can clearly see find supporter perks, including Zoom links in the Discord. So what happens when you become a supporter on my Substack is you get access to a variety of perks. That includes 2 community Zoom calls with me every single week that are private, that are unrecorded, where you're going to have a great support group of like normal people that you can talk about whatever you want to talk about in an open environment. It really does help keep a lot of people sane. You're also going to get Bitchcraft this Saturday. Bitchcraft we do on the second Saturday of every month at 3 p.m. It's an open Zoom where we bitch and craft. You can bring any craft you want. Of course, I will be knitting as the far most superior of all craft, but you can bring whatever craft you want, to include crochet, even if you feel like doing that sort of thing. And we do that on the second Saturday of every month at 3 p.m. You also get access to the supporter Discord, where we do writers group on Thursday night, movie night on Sunday nights. All of the different access perks are going to be in this newsletter. So if you want to come and join the community Zoom call that we have starting in about an hour and a half at 7 p.m., head over to the Substack and go to this post. And what you want to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath that red box right there, you will find your Zoom links. You will find your Discord invite. You will find your 10% off in the Unwoke Art Store. You will find all of your perk access in the weekly newsletter that I send out on Sundays every single week. And so that's how you can get access to support the work I'm doing. Now, I want to give you another reason to become a supporter today, because this week we are doing not 1, but 2 spy streams. And the first spy stream we're going to do is really effing early tomorrow. I'm going to have to get out of bed early for this one. I hope you are all appreciative, because we are doing a spy stream tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. that will only be available to my supporters on so if you are a supporter on Substack, if you're a supporter on Locals, on Patreon, if you're a Twitter subscriber, and if you're a YouTube channel member, you will get access to the links. I'm going to be sending out the access information later on tonight, so it will be in your inbox bright and early tomorrow. And the spy stream that we're doing tomorrow at 9:30 is a major city government training about gender and sexuality. So on Spy Stream, we go inside live woke trainings and I show you what's going on. And so if you want to come see what a major US city is training people in regards to gender and sexuality, you're going to be able to see that tomorrow at 9:30. And if you have to be somewhere, it'll still be there when you get back, Deborah. Sorry, everyday therapist, sorry. It'll still be there because you can access the on-demand replay later. Okay. So that's happening tomorrow at 9:30. And then on Thursday, we're being a little bit more generous. I think it starts at like noon on Thursday, something like that. I'll have to go back in and look at the times. But we are doing a racial equity training on Thursday. That is another spy stream as well. Okay, so the only way to get access to Spy Stream is by becoming a supporter on one of the things I mentioned, and I definitely prefer you becoming a supporter on the Substack, because that's just where I want my supporters going to from now on. So that's going to be tomorrow and Thursday. Looking forward to that. I also do want to remind people that we are doing another round of the How to Speak Socialist training coming up in a couple weeks on January 24th. You can register for this for free. This is where I go through all of my best clips to really do a kind of crash course. If you are new to the land of the socialist, this is going to be a crash course in how to understand their language. So this is going to be really good for people who are new to Socialism Saturdays or things like that, that you're still like, this is all crazy, Carlin. I don't know what you're talking about. This is your crash course to be able to learn it in one place. It is free to sign up for this. Please share it out with friends and family and all that. And we will come together and we will learn how to speak the language of the left, because if you don't understand the language of the left, it's actually a lot harder to be able to create effective strategies to fight back against them. This is why conservatives suck so badly at fighting back against the left, because they don't understand the language the left is using. And so they think the left is doing something over here when in fact they're doing something over here, because they don't understand the definitions of terms. Okay. We are using the same vocabulary. We are not using the same dictionary. I'm going to give you the Rosetta Stone for understanding what the left is actually saying. All you have to do is show up and watch some clips and listen to some stuff and learn. And I promise you, you're going to see the world in a whole new way if you do that. All right, guys, a couple more quick announcements. Last night, very exciting. I've been teasing this for a couple weeks, but I did officially launch the Unwoke Wiki last night. This is where I'm going to be putting primary source documentation of like all the stuff we're finding, all over the internet. So if you go into the wiki right now, you're going to be able to see stuff. You're going to be able to see stuff like, well, let's just actually do this. Let's do this. University of Minnesota. And then click search. Look at that. We've got the University of Minnesota. We also have R.B. Brooks, who we met last week. So you're going to be able to go in and see what we're finding on these websites, see the people involved, see all the videos from the University of Minnesota all in one place. So you can find all this in one area. And then you're going to be able to see the people involved as well. Remember, we met R.B. Brooks last week. R.B. Brooks now has an entry in the Unwoke wiki, so we can start to kind of keep track of all this stuff. Now, I did get some asks for people who wanted to be involved and help input stuff into the Unwoke wiki, because there's not a lot of stuff in there right now. We've got to do a massive effort to get all of this stuff into the website. We've already got Reagan and Bot set up on the system. And here's how I'm going to do it for volunteers, guys, because I definitely want people to be able to help out if they want to help out. The first round of volunteers is going to be from my supporter community, people who I know, people who have been around for a while, people who I trust. If you want to get in on that, what you need to do is do things like show up and participate in the chat on YouTube, interact with me on Twitter, share out my content. I know who shares out my content and who doesn't. Come to the community Zoom calls and actually talk to us and let me get to know you. Be an active, involved member of the community. That is going to be the first step right now. Not everyone can go on and edit this wiki because, quite frankly, I don't trust most people to do it. I trust Reagan and I trust Bot. Brooklyn, you can absolutely get in on this as well, because they've been around a long time and they have been participatory, and I know that they understand it, okay? So it's not a wiki where everyone can go in and add stuff. This is more of a closed thing, and we're going to start to just build it out and get as much stuff in there as we possibly can. So again, if you want to be involved, make yourself involved, man. Show me that you understand your stuff. Show me that you understand the importance of what we're doing and the nuance of what we're doing, and you're not just watching libs of TikTok videos all day and pretending that's the real world, and you'll be able to get involved as well. Would you have a history documentary of how the Marxists took over the institutions? I don't right this second, but maybe someday. Maybe someday with the help of the wiki, because the wiki is where we're going to be categorizing all the information, you understand? So maybe someday, maybe someday. Last thing I want to say, guys, is the way that I'm funding the Unwoke wiki, and I think this is kind of cool, is I am selling every single month a series, like basically a unique merch design, because every month I'm going to be changing that Plague Doctor logo on the Unwoke wiki website. And in order to fund it, I'm selling unique merch in the Unwoke art store that is only available for 1 month with the merch design on it. And I think it's pretty effing cool. And you can get it in black. You can also get it in purple for the hoodies and for the t-shirts. Look at the purple hoodie. Hang on. There we go. I mean, come on. Come on. Isn't that cool? You get some cool stuff. You can give gifts. You can keep it for yourself if you want to. It has the Unwoke Wiki shirt logo on the front, and then on the back it has the Socialist Revolution is real. So you're basically becoming a walking billboard for me, which of course I appreciate. And that's going to be a new thing that we're doing in the Unwoke art store every month. You can usually find it on the homepage. You can also find it right up here in the top menu. It says Unwoke Wiki. While you're there, you can also get the limited edition Whiteness Means Capitalism Mickey Mouse shirt. And all of that those two designs will only be available for the rest of the month. Does the Plague Doctor is like your mascot? Yes, the Plague Doctor is our mascot for this year. He does not have a name. Maybe we can go through a community process and name him. All right, guys, that is all I have. God damn, that was a lot. A lot of stuff going on, but I appreciate you guys hanging in. Let's get into it and let's start watching our video. We are going to learn about non-monogamy as taught at the University of Minnesota. All right, everyone, please make sure you mount the like button for me on whatever platform you are watching on. Please also make sure that you are subscribed over on my YouTube or on Rumble, or on Twitter if you're watching over on Twitter. I appreciate everyone coming out today. Let's pay attention. Make sure you're asking good questions if you have them. And I don't know. Let's learn about how to queer our relationships. I hope this sounds okay. I think it is. Sounds a little crazy right now.
Ready to go. Would you start it? Yeah. Okay. Hi. My name is Jai Negri, and
Okay. So we're going to have to deal with some sound issues today. Everyone's just going to have to hang in. It's important that we watch this. We'll make it as painless as possible. And if it's really that bad, we'll watch something else, okay?
Non-Monogamous in your community, and I'm hoping to have a dialogue with you. So please send your questions or ideas throughout the presentation. So there are a lot of kinds of intimacy in our world. Like most of us have many relationships.
There is a weird kind of like, it sounds like an air conditioner going on. Just to be really clear, I don't want to hear any fucking complaining about the sound, all right? There is a weird kind of air conditioner that's going on that it sounds like it's blowing right into the goddamn microphone. I don't control that. I can't fix that. We're just going to have to manage. And if it gets really bad, then we will watch something else, all right?
Relationships that we're juggling at one time, and sharing different kinds of dynamics depending on the circumstances or depending on the intention of the relationship. So there are many ways to be intimate: intellectual, physical, sexual, spiritual, emotional, professional. And then sometimes there's unique intimate relationships like surrogacy or people who engage with their higher power in that fashion. Patrons and artists and honestly.
Did she just say you could be in an intimate relationship with God? That's interesting. All right.
More relationships that aren't necessarily the scripted ones we inherit when we think about romantic relationships. So there's a lot of different ways to have that intimacy that isn't just romantic. So all relationships can encompass many consensual relational styles that share many kinds of intimacy. And then here we have just a sampling of relationship styles. So as you can see.
Okay, so let's read this list. Some relational styles: polyamory, single poly, polyconstellation, celibacy, relationship anarchy, asexual or aromantic, poly-mono combinations, blended co-parenting families, enhanced friendships, friends with benefits, metamors, monogamy. What the fuck is a metamor? Unicorn and couple. What does unicorn and couple mean? Swingers, open relationship, monogamish, flirtationships, ambiguous sweeties, nesting partners, life partners.
Many of us might have a selection of one or two on this list. Polyamory being one. Relationship anarchy, blended co-parenting families. Louder? Yeah, I'll speak louder.
Wait. Bot says, metamor is the term for a person who's the partner of your partner. So if your spouse has a lady love, she's your metamor. So it means that you're in a relationship with someone who's in a relationship with your spouse, but not in a relationship with you, but is in a relationship with you. That's weird. Okay, whatever.
It's okay. I'll try to speak louder. some of these maybe we don't even know what they are, like metamors. People think, what is that one? And that is if a person is in a polyamorous relationship or non-monogamous relationship and their partners, other partners would be their metamors. So there's a relationship there as well. Monogamish, I heard recently, is a fun term. I've heard it described as couples who primarily are monogamous, but have permission or agreement around engaging in sexual activities outside the relationship, and that not counting as any sort of cheating or any sort of like a negative thing, but as an agreed upon. And thank you, sweeties, is one of my favorites because it's cute. And nesting partners are people who have chosen to share a home together, but may or may not have other intimacy with each other. So some of these options combine.
So this is like a master list of all the different ways to queer a relationship. So I'm going to take a picture of that. I'm going to write about that later. Unicorn polyamory is a relationship model in which an existing couple brings in a third party, usually. So it's a threesome. It just means a threesome. Okay, so here's the thing, guys. And this is one of the reasons why bullshit like Libs of TikTok is so goddamn dangerous. Because it teaches you things that are not real. Very, 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 very rarely will these people bring up relationships with children. Extremely rarely. And so for everyone who thinks like this is why like all like the groomer stuff got way out of control. And it gave conservatives ideas that are not necessarily true about the left. Not every leftist wants to diddle kids. In fact, very few of them even talk about it. So, well, that does exist, and I'm acknowledging that that does exist, it is not the norm of what you're going to see, even in these types of discussions. So, that's not real. Naruto, I didn't have Mark Cuban going to bat for Marxism on my 2024 bingo card. He's not. Mark Cuban doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, is what's going on. He's not going to bat for Marxism. Mark Cuban does not understand that what he's talking about is Marxism. All right, Jake, you're going to need to catch up, bro, because as we've already established at the beginning of the presentations, queer has nothing to do with who you sleep with. Queer has nothing to do with being trans. Queer is only and exclusively a far left political ideology. It has nothing to do with any of this. So again, like, I'm very sorry that conservative influencers have lied to you. Well, if you know, then why did you insinuate otherwise? Because it kind of seems like you're being inflammatory just to be inflammatory, and I don't do that shit here. No, it will never be an amazing resource because all Chaya cares about is making money. That's all she cares about. Money. So it will never, ever be an amazing resource. It will always be clickbait, bullshit, content farming that is designed to make her a millionaire. That's all that is.
Inherited scripts for relating. So when we think about the scripts we inherit from our culture, I know for me, I inherited a script called heteronormative monogamous marriage. So I have images that come to my mind when I hear those terms of family members or my grandparents who, as far as I know of, had that style of relationship. And it, so I can look to those relationships for ideas or advice if I was not sure how to go about my own relationship and I was following the type and inherited script. Also, even thinking outside of like romantic relationships, I think about my relationship to, say, my male character.
You're trying to get me to say that they're all groomers, and I've already given you an answer for that, which is no. And now we're going to drop the topic, Jake. Because, listen, this is what conservatives do. They come in and they're like, groomer, 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 pedophile, pedophile, groomer, pedophile. Literally nothing that has happened so far has anything to do with children. And so, can we just not insert bullshit into this that's not there? Has there been anything that's been said about kids so far? No. So why are we talking about kids? Rottweiler, on the PDF question for the newbies, the reason why some of them say kids are little adults is to destabilize the family unit. MAPs are in a fringe minority trying to get into the queer club. That's exactly right, Rottweiler. I appreciate that. Jake, I'm no longer going to acknowledge you if you continue to bring things into this discussion that are not relevant to what is being presented. Well, and now that's been answered for you. And so now I'm asking you to stop. And when I ask you to stop doing something, I'd expect no whining. I expect no complaining. I expect you to stop doing the thing that I'm asking you to stop doing, because now this is becoming a distraction.
Here. Like, they bring me the mail every day, and that's their role, and I do my role, I take the mail out, right? But if I wanted that relationship to go off script, then I might want to engage with them in a conversation about, like, hey, I'd like to give you coffee once a week because I love that you bring me the mail and it makes me really happy, so I want to do this.
All right, so I want to make a point of this. Jake has now broken rule number 1 in my chat, which is don't be a dick, do not insult me, do not insult my audience, do not whine and complain when I tell you to stop doing something. Jake has broken this rule, and now Jake is going to get timed out for 5 minutes. If Jake continues to break the rules after his timeout, he will be permanently banned from the chat. We're not doing this shit this year, guys. Goodbye, Jake. Take your 5 minutes, and if you come back and continue to bring bullshit into my chat, we're just going to remove you permanently.
For you. And so anytime we want to go off script from what we've inherited, it takes a lot more conversations and a lot more intentionality behind it than, like, you know your role, I know mine, let's both go down this path together. When even then, sometimes I think I know what your role is, you think you know mine, but as we do it, we're discovering there's bumps in the road, even no matter what style of relationship.
Well, and this is the thing. This is the point that I was making with that guy, because it is. And by the way, guys, everyone is going to refocus on what we're actually watching right now. But, like, I'm going to say this first. The reason I was so hard on that guy is because this is insane. We can't have any conversations about this without a conservative coming in and trying to make it all about groomers and pedophiles, even when children are not mentioned at all. And it's a weird, creepy obsession that, quite frankly, makes me think that a lot of conservatives want to diddle kids. Because, like, they're obsessed with it. They bring it up all the time, out of nowhere. Everyone that disagrees with them is a groomer. Everyone that disagrees with them is a pedophile. They use the language just like the left uses the term racist or transphobe. And it's like they're completely fucking oblivious to anything else going on. And it's creepy and it's weird. And I'm not going to put up with that shit here. So, with that said, I want everyone to focus in on the presentation that we're actually watching, and let's, like, make sure our attention is there, because it's already kind of hard to hear. And so we want to make sure we're concentrating.
While all people can enjoy benefits of various relationship styles, having expanded close relationship options is especially critical for the queer and trans community, as many are isolated from their family of origin. So as you, I'm sure, can imagine, if you find yourself isolated from your family of origin.
So family of origin. So the premise of this is that if you come out as queer, your family's going to hate you, and so your family's going to disown you. And so if you're queer, you need to develop a family of choice, because your family of origin, your birth family, the nuclear family, is going to reject you entirely for going against the capitalist norm. And so you have to come up with a new family structure. And that's what family of choice means.
the value you place on other connections is going to be at a heightened level. You're going to see those people as maybe a chosen family or a family you've discovered out of seeking connections in your community as you try to figure out how to navigate the world without your family of origin as a support for that. So it wouldn't surprise me to hear someone in the LGBT community share that they are interested in considering more connections, whether it be romantic relationships or more of the chosen family, like who are we going to spend Thanksgiving with this year? Is it our family of origin? Is it our significant other? Is it more than one significant other? Is it people we call our nieces and sisters and cousins who we actually have no blood relationship with, but that's our new chosen family? Are there any questions so far? Okay. So, systemic impact of discrimination by communities and families also led to
Okay. I want to make a point about this. Look at this slide. Systemic impact. Systemic impact of discrimination by communities and families also lends to higher levels of depression and hopelessness in the queer and trans community. Anytime you see a reference to the system, what do they mean when they say the system or systemic impact? What are they referring to? They're referring to the system of capitalism. Referring to, hang on, chat jump, the system of capitalism. Why are they referring to the system of capitalism? Capitalism run by the private property owners. That was kind of a gimme, right? So now let's go to the next level. Why do they believe that the system of capitalism creates an impact of discrimination by communities and families, also leading to higher levels of depression and hopelessness among the queer and trans community? Because capitalism upholds the nuclear family. That's part of it, but that's not all of it. Capitalism is preserved by the family unit through social reproduction. Yes. I'm looking for an answer that's not the usual answer that you guys are going to give me. The nuclear family is the basis of capitalism? No, private property is the basis of capitalism. The nuclear family is a form of private property. They think, okay, now we're getting closer. They think every problem is caused by capitalism. Yes. No, I'm not rephrasing the question just because you guys haven't gotten to the answer yet. We're not going to play that game. Why do they believe that capitalism creates a systemic impact of discrimination by communities and families, also lends to higher levels of depression and hopelessness? Why would capitalism do that? Guys, we're moving into advanced classes now. I know you guys say the same things over and over and over again when I ask these questions, but I need people to start thinking more abstractly. What does capitalism create? Aha! We're starting to get into the answer. What does capitalism create? Unequal resources. What is another name for unequal resources? It leads to, is that word inequity? Capitalism creates inequities, not inequality, not inequality, Evelyn. Not equality, not equality. Capitalism creates inequity, which means people have inequitable access to care. When we're talking about the trans and queer community specifically, one of the things they want is for the government to pay for all of their trans affirming care, to include hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of surgeries. And they say that if the government doesn't pay for all of their care, that is inequitable. And that's why we need universal health care in order to pay for everything, so that everyone has access to all the same resources. And the reason that we don't have universal health care and everyone doesn't have access to all the same resources is because of capitalism, because capitalism creates a profit motivation. And without that profit motivation, they would be able to have access to whatever types of care they want, and everyone would have the same resources. And some people have more resources than others because they're born into rich families, and that old thing was created by capitalism too. Do you guys understand that? And I understand why people said the nuclear family stuff, because you say the same things every time, but does everyone understand why they believe that capitalism is a system that creates a systemic impact of discrimination? Or do I need to explain again? Yes, they want people to rubber stamp surgeries. Yes. That's not the point, AD. You know that. This is also why they attach abortion with trans. Capitalism leads to privatized healthcare. Exactly. They want everyone to have the same resources, but capitalism prevents everyone from having the same resources. Okay, guys, remember, this is not a matter of debunking them. We don't debunk them. The point here is not to debunk them. The point here is not to say, well, they think they're getting into it, but they don't really know what universal. That's not the point. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we're doing. The goal is to understand them, not to debunk them. Okay, it seems like people understand.
Depression and hopelessness in the queer and trans community. So this is also not news to those communities. Maybe for those outside the community it might be. But having those additional layers of discrimination add to the need to reach out. So before we started the lecture, we were all talking about being introverts. And so we may not all feel a strong need to have a big circle of people in our world, but the more we struggle with things like depression and hopelessness, the more we need to make sure we're reaching out and having several people as community to make sure we're getting through that. Queer and trans community members are often facing challenges that encompass their other identities and social roles as they intersect with the queer trans identity. So here we're talking about perhaps their race or class or family structure. Perhaps they're a parent or have family out of the country that they're still connecting with.
Actually, so Kenneth is making a great point in the chat. Actually, this is the root of the trans genocide claims, I think. If you're denied surgery, the system is effectively murdering people's true identity. Well, they're also saying it in terms of like they believe that if you're trans, you're going to be like murdered in the streets or something. So they say it in two different ways, but you're not wrong about this. So if you're denying them the life-saving healthcare that they need, this is the argument that they make around kids. This is like when parents bring their trans kids in to see the doctor, and the doctor's trying to guilt trip them and like emotionally manipulate them into giving kids like hormones and all that stuff. They say your kids will literally die if they don't get these hormones. So you're right about that. Does this have anything to do with socialism believing that capitalism created these social constructs? Well, I mean, of course, because they believe that if we just get rid of capitalism, then all of these problems will be solved. Yeah, exactly, Bot. Would you rather have a son or a dead daughter? That's exactly right.
And all of that just adds more layers of complexity. So we're all very complex beings, very layered. So none of us are just one identity. And figuring out how to navigate that within all of these other pieces can be additionally challenging. having those safer support structures is critical for the survival of our queer and trans community, regardless of whether or not that includes non-monogamous options for intimacy. So this is not, no matter what kind of relationships you engage in, connection matters. And for our trans women of color, it is a matter of life and death for many of them. To have somewhere to go that isn't, for some of them, to have community that supports them so that they're not left to be targeted. So the more community somebody has, the more layers of protection around them they have, whether it be the family of origin or those tighter communities that you engage with. And it's critical. So here we have time for more questions. Some of the terms might be a little complicated. There's like-minded community on various places. Facebook certainly has several communities of different kinds. So you can search for non-monogamy or polyamory, or I think there's relationship anarchy, or there's some that are like monogamous, polyamorous couple relationship support. So there's a lot you can find thanks to the internet and Facebook. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good, Jake. So you do know what you're talking about.
How about you again?
Yeah. So I have a question.
Hang on. Offensive Saint, I know you don't mean this seriously, but well, first of all, she's not teaching K through 12. This is a college class, so these are not, in theory, youth that she's teaching. But, like, you know this is not going to happen, right? Like, I know you're a groper. You understand that this is not actually going to happen, right? Because you guys kind of exist in your own little echo chamber where you really think that you're going to get your, like, authoritarian Christian monarchy someday. And, like, I know that you're just playing around, but, like, you know this isn't going to happen, right? States don't even enforce the laws they have on the books, let alone, you know, do anything of value. Ah, typical groper. That's all right. You can have fun. All right, I guess they're going into a 20-minute Q&A, which is actually great for us because Q&A is when they say the quiet parts out loud.
And so when people are in like multiple relationships, I'm not sure if you know how to answer this, but how do you deal with jealousy if you're in multiple relationships, or you know, if you feel like your partner is like going off with someone too much, or you know, like how do you deal with that? I guess.
Yeah. Jealousy is a really common question people have about non-monogamy. I've heard several ways people can answer that. For some people, they try to reframe it in their mind. So they think about the fact that the other person's not their property. They're an independent individual who has things that make them happy that aren't all going to be you, and nor should it be. Like, we all want to have several things that make us happy, right? Like, if we have one best friend, it's okay to have other friends. And it's okay if you have more than one child to love those other children. And so sometimes it's just the reframing of this person has a right to do these things, and remembering that it's not inherently a threat to the things that you value and want in your relationship with that individual, because you can ask for what you want and you can communicate about that. So if they're spending
Actually, Prometheus, you're right. Isn't it funny that she was like, your partner is not your private property, which is true. Like, that's true, but I think that the wording that she used, specifically saying your partner is not your private property, in order to, like, get over jealousy issues when it comes to, like, polyamory. That was really specific wording, wasn't it? Great note. Yeah, jealousy in a non-monogamous relationship means capitalism. Of course it does. Of course it does. Jake, I know that you're a student and so you're coming at this from an academic context. I do not come at this from an academic context. We only listen to real world people, like not we don't read philosophy of dead people here. I'm going to tell you what they define as private property. They define your home as private property, they define your land as private property, they define your business as private property, they define if you own like an apartment building that you're a landlord of, they define that as private property. They define your children as private property, and they define your individual rights as private property. I don't play this game of differentiating between personal or private property because the things that we care about are all defined as private property. They are not defined as personal property. We're not talking about a phone or a book or any of those things. And so I find this distinction between private property and personal property to be fundamentally distracting from what the issue actually is.
More time with someone, you would want to ask yourself.
Yes. So, offensive saint, private property creates all inequities. It's not inequalities, it's inequities, because we're talking about when they're talking about capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, is creating all the problems in the world. They're talking about disparities in outcomes. Disparities in outcomes is inequities, not inequalities. And that language is really, really important. They try to trick people by using those words interchangeably, but it's the outcome that they care about that's important. So what they believe is that capitalism, because it has a profit motive, the ownership of private property will basically create these inequities. So it means some people have more resources than other people. It creates inequities in health because we don't have universal health care. It creates inequities in education when you have privatized education versus public education because some kids have better access to better education than others. It creates environmental problems because businesses are seeking to make profit over people. It creates basically every problem that you can think of in society, these people can trace back to capitalism, which they define as private property ownership. And what it all comes down to is some people are going to have more private property than other people. And so if some people have more private property than other people, that's going to be an inequity. And that's why they want to get rid of all private property in general. Make sense?
Is it up to me to decide who they spend this time with? No, it isn't. However, when I notice them spending so much time with that person, it reminds me that my needs aren't quite being met in a way that I was hoping for from my relationship with that person. So instead of communicating, like, I don't want you going with that person anymore, we would want to communicate our own needs. Like, I'm interested in more dates with you. How can we negotiate that so that we both feel satisfied with our relationship? And then another interesting idea is the idea of conversion, which is actually finding in yourself joy and happiness for your partner's joy and happiness. And to practice that, you would start with things that aren't the most threatening, right? Like, you'd start by thinking of the things that, okay, they like to play racquetball, or they're really into the knitting or something that I personally have no interest
knitting
in.
always comes up.
How can I find what about that makes them happy? And try to find my own joy in that. Like, boy, I've noticed every time they come back from that knitting club, they just have a glow about them and they seem calmer and more relaxed. And I bet they get a lot out of that.
Respect the knitting.
And then I get along with them better because they're more relaxed and in a good mood. So whatever your person is out doing in the world, again, bringing it back to your relationship with them, what's coming back to me? Are they coming home ignoring me? Well, then if I don't want to be ignored, we're going to discuss that. And it's not about where you just came from. It's about what my needs are and what your needs are and what we said we were going to provide each other or not. So ultimately, communication in all relationships, right? Like, even if your partner is monogamous with you, if they really like to go golfing every Saturday morning, and now you've both retired together and you're older and you're ready to take on some adventures, and they're like, now I'm going to golf every day. You might run into a similar sense of like jealousy, like, but now I'm jealous of the golf course. Like, I wanted that time. I don't know why I felt entitled to it. I guess I didn't discuss it with you, but now let's discuss it because I'm noticing that there's something that I would hope for that's not happening.
Did you say Soviet children have such good education teaching engineering and rocket science to children? I mean, well, so this comes, you must have seen me say this on Twitter because I was having a conversation with my husband this morning where, okay, here's how the conversation started. It started with us talking about grammar, and he was like, Carlin, that's like the past perfect tense of something. And I was like, I have no idea what the fucking past perfect tense is. I never had to conjugate a sentence in school. And so we started talking about my lack of grammar education in school and how he had to conjugate sentences and I didn't. And he started learning the English language when he was 7. And I didn't start learning foreign language until I was like in high school, which is stupid because you should always start. Anyway, because he went to school in Ukraine when it was still in the USSR. And all that stuff. And so then he started talking about, he was like, did you take biochemistry in school? I was like, fuck no. He's like, did you take electrical like engineering in school? I was like, no, I didn't have any of that stuff in school. He's like, did you learn physics? I was like, yeah, we started physics in the 12th grade. And so it was this like, we were talking about all the things basically that he did in elementary school that I may have got like a unit of in like a high school class or something. So that's what we were talking about. That's where that came from. But mostly public schools in America sucks, and that's why we need to defund all of them.
And then a couple of other challenges of polyamory that I've heard about, or even non-monogamy in general, really come down to that piece of time. So scheduling and people keeping their word about their scheduling and honoring those commitments they've made and making sure to notify the other person if they're not going to keep those commitments, or if they've discovered they didn't, to come back and say, hey, I didn't keep this commitment. Here's what I'm committed to going forward. And again, these things apply really to all relationships, right? Like your mom always calls and wants to get together, and you're like, well, I don't want to see her every day or every week. Like, what feels right to me? What feels right to her? How can we come up with an amount of time as two adults that seeing mom is the right schedule, you know? Or I used to visit my grandmother in the nursing home, and we would go every Sunday. And that felt right. It was like, well, this is how often we're going to go see this family member and engage in the relationship that we have with them. Or call, you know. But ultimately, it comes down to all of that. Like, it's scheduling, time, and resources, including your emotional labor. I mean, maybe you decide to have a relationship only with yourself. Like, this is how I'm going to conduct my life right now. I'm going to, in my case, I'm going to graduate school and have 3 children. And it's like, boy, I don't really have room for much else. And I think the third piece is going to have to be my self-care. Like, so if I have friends that want to come with to the gym, I would love that. But if they don't, that's where I'm spending my time. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for answering.
I have a question. So we are both therapists, and so we work with folks all the time who identify as non-monogamous. And one thing that I try to do is know, with any community member I'm working with, what are the strengths of that community? Have you experienced in the non-monogamous community any particular strengths, like around communication?
Yeah, there's a lot of strengths. In the non-monogamous community, one of the biggest things I think of just hearing you ask that question is times of crisis and difficulty are where it really kicks in, that family community setting. When you go to the hospital to see your partner and their other partner comes, the two of you get to lean on each other. The two of you get to say, why don't you spend a few hours with this person while I go take care of my children, and then I'm going to come back. You know, we don't want to leave them.
Does anyone else find that creepy? I mean, really, does anyone else just find that creepy? Like, I'm not entirely convinced, and this will get me in trouble, but like, I'm going to say it anyway. I'm not entirely convinced that people are meant to be monogamous. But I also find it creepy. Like, if my husband was like screwing someone else and it was consensual and we all agreed to it, and I was like, all right, you need to go have your fun, like whatever, and you know, like whatever. And like he went into the hospital for some reason, and I, as the wife, showed up at the hospital. Do you know who I'm not gonna lean on for support? Is the other woman my husband is fucking. And that's just like a hypothetical. I'm not saying that's like a real thing that's like happening or anything. I'm just using it as a hypothetical because like I just I find that to be very, very odd that like it crosses like a line. It's like you're venturing into like polygamy now, which is weird. He's been around. I haven't seen him today though. He's definitely been around though. But it's like just because just because like your partner has a relationship with someone doesn't mean that you have a relationship with that person, right? No, I don't want to lean on the shoulder of my metamor. Because it's like it's also like I didn't choose that person. My partner chose that person. And so I may have and if my partner chose that person, then I think there's probably a good assumption that like that person's not going to be like me because if it was just about me, it would be like he wouldn't need to go to someone else, right? Like that person is going to have something in some way that I don't have, which means like would I even get along with that person? I don't know. I just think it's weird. Well, I mean, this is a good point, Tate, and you've got to remember they have a collective mindset. So your partner's partner is like, so everyone's part of the collective, like everyone belongs to everyone else, sort of thing. Like this is all very Brave New World.
We're concerned about them being in the hospital without support. But so it creates just more people to provide that support. Sometimes childcare also will be like, well, there are children in each of these pieces, but instead of hiring out a babysitter, how about I'll take all the kids tonight and you guys go have a date, and then on a different night you'll take all the kids and I'll go out on a date. So it's just again more larger community sharing and like leaning into those other community members as more of a family or more of a strength or more of someone to have support and less of a adversary.
I have another question.
Yay.
So if I feel like queer and trans people often already feel a lot of like stigma because of their identities, and you know if they're opening up their relationships or are in non-monogamous relationships, they kind of receive a lot of backlash from people like outsiders basically. Do you have any advice for dealing with that, or just maybe even in general, like how to deal with people who don't approve of your relationship, or like maybe you're really close to them and they're just like, I don't get this. So any advice for that?
I think I heard multiple pieces there, so
Yeah.
let's see if I can answer, remember what they all are. Certainly, the queer and trans community is already heavily judged. And if you add polyamory onto that, there's now more layers that are also not protected. So when it comes to going to court or family matters, things can get really messy because polyamory is not protected at all, right? So
Hang on.
how to deal with those extended.
So this presentation was given in 2017. So first of all, let's just wrap our heads around that. This was 6 effing years ago at the University of Minnesota. All right. But one of the things that she just said is that polyamory is not legally protected, which back in 2017 was true, except there has already started to be legal pushes for protecting polyamory. And I'm going to offer you the example of Somerville, Massachusetts, about an hour south of me, part of the one of the wokest areas in all of Boston. Somerville, Massachusetts has legal protections for polyamorous couples. Somerville, Massachusetts is becoming like the polyamory mecca because it specifically has legal protections. And the reason this is important is because this is how socialists win. This is the part that people don't pay attention to. It's by instituting laws and policies that support the type of world that they want to create. And in this case, it's a world that has queered the nuclear family because they believe that they can't abolish capitalism until they get rid of the nuclear family. And so they have to put laws and policies in place to proactively subvert the nuclear family. And one of the things they're doing is legal pushes to protect polyamorous couples. That's going to encourage more polyamorous couples. And I'm saying, like, I'm not actually like, okay, I want to be very clear. Not every polyamorous couple is socialist. I know several polyamorous couples. None of them are leftists. Actually, some of them are kind of conservative, believe it or not. Yeah, it's true. Polyamory comes in all shapes and forms, okay? So I'm not saying that all polyamorous couples are socialist, but polyamorous relationships, and specifically like legal protections for those relationships, is one of the things that the left is pushing in order to queer the nuclear family.
Family members, or is it like maybe close friends you said who don't understand what you're doing?
Yeah.
How did I meet? I mean, I've just met them. I mean, how people meet anyone. Like, how people meet everyone.
I know there's a really good website called More Than Two that answers many, many, many questions about polyamory and helps people reframe their understanding of it. And similarly, like what we talked about before, like, well, I don't understand the knitting, you know, but I don't have to understand it. I don't have to want to do it myself to understand it. And really, again, the communication is the key. So maybe I would ask my friend, like, what do you love about it? Help me understand.
Hang on. Why can't polyamory and monogamy coexist? It can. Polyamory and monogamy has coexisted for a long time, guys. Polyamory is not a new thing. Swingers have always been around. You know what I'm saying? Couples have always engaged in threesomes or foursomes or fivesomes, depending on how, like, you know, really an infinite number of some if you're feeling, you know, amorous. But my point is not that polyamory is bad, because I don't actually think polyamory is bad. My point is not that all polyamorous couples are socialists, because there are a lot of polyamorous couples that are not socialists. My point is not that polyamory and monogamy can't coexist, because they can and they always have. My point is that the way that socialists are going to create a socialist world is by pushing laws and policies that benefit the type of society that they want, to encourage people into that type of society. That's what my point is. And that is bigger than polyamory versus monogamy. They do this for absolutely everything. They're doing the same thing. Why do you think we see all these laws attacking parental rights? It's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. They introduce laws and policies designed explicitly to attack parental rights, because those attacks on parental rights attack the nuclear family, which they believe they need to destroy under capitalism. They introduce laws and policies to protect polyamorous couples and give them like the same rights and privileges of married couples, because they're trying to queer the nuclear family, because they believe they need to destroy the nuclear family in order to destroy capitalism. The motive is always the same.
So that I can support you? Or do you even need me to support you? Or is this something you're just doing on your own? And you described it as couples who are already a couple who have decided to open their partnership into a multi-ship of some sort.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. So there's individual poly people, there's configurations and constellations of various kinds. And when it comes to even the identity of polyamory or non-monogamy, for some people I've heard them say it's a lifestyle choice and change that they're making with a partner. And other people say, this is my identity, this is how I've always been, this is I can't imagine it any other way, and I don't understand how people can do monogamy. Like, they just feel wired that way. So there's going to be different challenges for each. But at the end of the day, like, the people we love and care about matter to us. And if the other people in our lives also care about us, then we just need to talk about it and not be afraid to talk about it.
Thank you.
So I have a question. What advice would you give to having some of these conversations? Opening up discussions that may be really challenging, very personal, very emotional, right?
Yeah. So opening up these conversations, advice I would.
Hang on. This is a good question. I like Offensive Saint is asking such good questions today. Did boomers being so ultra money focused help propel the youth to being attracted to socialism? I don't think so. I think that so I don't know how old you are, but I'm betting you're like in your like, early 20s or something like that, maybe even younger. You can let us know if you feel like it, you don't have to. But like the reality is that most people who are your age have been fed this throughout their entire education. So it's been it like this stuff has now been in the K through 12 education system nationally as long as like people like you have been in that system. And how they feed it to you is they drip it out in every single subject matter over the course of years and years and years and years and years. So it's not like it's just one lesson, it's integrated into the entire curriculum. And that's true in pretty much every school district in the country. And so I think that I don't think it had anything to do with boomers being ultra money focused, because I'm not even sure that that's true. I think it had to do with it's all that many people have ever known. It's all they've ever been taught. Like, there used to be, back in the day, I actually have the textbook. It's sitting on my bookshelf over there. They used to have entire like units around why communism is bad in school. They wrote textbooks around communism is bad for a reason X, Y, B, and Z, and you need to understand this. Here are all the people that would die because of communism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They don't teach that in school anymore. In fact, what they teach is capitalism is bad and this more collectivist mindset is good. So I think that that's a bigger driving factor of it than boomers being ultra focused on money. I mean, and can you also like, I mean, you look at something like even like the videos that you guys do, like the videos that Nick does for his shows, like you guys are kind of obsessed with money too. Like, what are the videos that like intro Nick's show? It's Nick on a private plane and Nick in a limousine and Nick doing this and Nick doing that and you guys smoking cigars on like a hotel balcony in Vegas and like all that stuff. And like, don't tell me you guys hate capitalism. You don't hate capitalism at all. You don't If you guys hated capitalism, then there wouldn't be all these videos of like Nick doing all this fancy stuff, like introing his show. Come on.
Give. I mean, it's really hard to give advice without knowing context for me. I think if there's a lot of trepidation about how it's going to go, and you want to give that other person an opportunity to also have it go well on their side, because maybe they would want it to go well, but they wouldn't know what to say. So the first thing they blurt out might not be very polite, but sending them an email that's like, here's what's going on with me, and here's websites you can look at to learn about this, so that you hand over some education right along with it, so that they're not feeling quite as blindsided. They can process their own emotions in their own space without you there judging them, because these things could go both ways. And for some people, it's going to feel like a confrontation to their own lifestyle choice, just like when we were looking at same-sex marriage options. People feel confronted by that. Like, what does this mean about me and my marriage and my choice? Are you saying it's bad and wrong? So being sure to like validate their choice too. Like, hey, I see that you are a consenting adult married to another consenting adult, and I support and approve of that. I love weddings, and I fully support consenting adults making the choices that are right for them. So being supportive of what that other person is doing and sharing, by the way, this is what I'm considering or doing or have decided or have found in myself. So it's more from a perspective of we all get to choose, and I support your choice, and I'm hoping you can support mine. And then for a lot of people, again, it depends on who it is. So I have some family members that are very religious, so I might take the approach of discussing.
Hang on, I got a super chat from Rottweiler. Thank you. I think it's about society being better trained to call right-wing authoritarianism out better than left-wing authoritarianism, especially since tradcon boomers come off as authoritarians and neocons. Yeah, I mean, listen, man, this is another, like, this is an instance when, like, conservatives are their own worst enemies. If conservatives weren't doubling down so much on social issues and being like, all gays are bad and we shouldn't have gay marriage and all trannies are groomers and all drag queens are groomers. It's like, if conservatives weren't focusing on just like the hardcore double down on all the social issues that will just assure that they will never win another election for the rest of their lives, like that I think would actually go a long way, to be honest. Because it's so overt. It's much more overt authoritarianism than what the left is doing right now. That wasn't true a couple years ago. In 2020, the left was being overtly authoritarian, but now conservatives are being overtly authoritarian every single day of the week. And I think that this is a mindset that I don't even think conservatives realize this is true about themselves. I think that they don't understand how they're coming off to anyone who doesn't agree with them, because they've kind of now formed their own echo chambers where they're not listening to anyone else. They're just reinforcing each other. And so they think that everyone's on board with this, like, no, like, ban the gays from everything sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is that people aren't. Most people don't care if people are gay. Most people don't care if people are trans. Most people do have some sort of sense of, like, they want a fair world where everyone can just, like, be themselves and, like, leave me alone. So I do think that conservatives not being mindful of how they're coming across to people is absolutely a factor.
Like, you have a God that loves all of you, all of us. How is that possible? How do we not get jealous of each other? How do we support each other within that arena? And looking at, well, if God can love everybody, and if I can love all three of my daughters, is it also possible that more than one person could have a relationship, like more than two, I should say, can have a relationship that that is fulfilling and not just going to blow up in their face, which sometimes you hear that too. Like, you know, you're a married couple and now you're trying non-monogamy. How is it not just going to blow up in your face? Are you trying to just fix something that's broken? Like, why are you doing this? And of course, it doesn't hurt to ask ourselves, what is our motivation for this? But at the end of the day, you try something out, it might not work. The reason marriages fail is endless, right? There's so many different reasons a marriage might not be successful, or any relationship, whether they have a legally binding contract or not. Relationships fail. They fail all the time. And so to say, like, oh, their relationship failed because they tried polyamory is pretty unlikely the case. Like, more often than not, it's that there were already underlying concerns or issues that weren't being dealt with. And then polyamory came on the scene as an option for addressing maybe portions of it, but didn't resolve it. And it was heading in that direction. It was in and of itself heading in the direction of not staying connected. And polyamory might help expedite that, or it might help lengthen that for some couples. But non-monogamy in and of itself isn't intended, I don't think, to be the band-aid for relationships. I think the best successful relationships I know of are ones where people felt really solid together and made sure that they spent a couple of years in therapy together to address any issues they might have so that they can have polyamory work for them. Yes.
Another question. Any common misconceptions or
Stereotypes of it? Absolutely.
Of non-monogamy that you'd like to address?
Sure. I think the biggest one is this idea that, similar to people who have multiple attractions and not singular attractions, there's this similar sort of like, oh, you're polyamorous or you're non-monogamous, this must mean
that you have unlimited sexual partners all the time, which is like never the case for pretty much anybody, right? And from what I've seen, a number of polyamorous couples really struggle to find third or fourth partnerships additions. It's not actually the free for all. It comes across as it involves so much work, so much dedication, so much time, so much money. Like really,
Well, we
sometimes
don't
it's
know.
very
Maybe they're just being
expensive to
quiet.
maintain your relationship and have money to go on dates with new people, both of you. You know, so it's a big undertaking, and the financial piece also adds a classism piece where it's like non-monogamy is accessible to wealthier people who can afford the childcare and the hotel rooms or the whatever.
Oh. She's inadvertently making the argument that non-monogamy is capitalist because it's more accessible to wealthy people who are better able to afford hotel rooms for their trysts. That's funny. I didn't see that one coming.
It's a big undertaking, and the financial piece also adds a classism piece where it's like non-monogamy is accessible to wealthier people who can afford the childcare.
Hang on. We're not talking about polygamy. We're talking about polyamory. Those are two different things.
And the hotel rooms or the whatever it is they decided as the boundaries they want to have, less accessible.
Also, there are places, and you may not have been here when we talked about this earlier, but there are places that are starting to offer legal protection to multi-partnered people like Somerville, Massachusetts. So it's not, this is not going to stay, like, it's not going to be illegal everywhere forever. I promise you. Polygamy is when you're married to more than one person at the same time. Polyamory is just when you're in a relationship with more than one person. But like, you look at a place like Somerville is now offering insurance to multiple couples within a relationship, which is one of the main reasons that polygamy is not legal, is like multiple people taking advantage of benefits and stuff like that.
With less money, maybe more flexibility is required, but that's probably the biggest misconception I can think of, or the idea that this additional relationships can never be serious relationships. So that's a big misconception too. Like some of those secondary relationships or even multiple primary relationships can have equal importance to your life.
That's not the argument that's being made,
You
Chris.
have some friendships you're closer to and some you're not, and really you kind of ebb and flow through all of that. There's no like one connection usually that stays your whole life. It's your one best friend that you get married to, that you start a work partnership with, that you go to every activity with. You know, like usually we don't have it that monogamous of a lifestyle where it's one person forever for all things. And I don't even know if I would say that that would be very healthy, but that's not my call to make for other people.
Have you ever dealt with any or seen any negative reactions towards the idea of like non-monogamy or polyamory? And if you have, like, how have you dealt with them?
Have I seen negative reactions to polyamory? I mean, similar to coming out of the closet with trans or LGBT overall identities, you're going to have surprises of who's accepting and who's not. I've certainly seen things go the opposite as expected with political lines. Like some people will say, well, my family is so conservative and they judge everybody, so there's no way they're not disowning me. And then they find out the news and the family says, well, if my family member's gay, then now it's okay.
People can own private property in Japan. Am I wrong? People can own their houses. People can own businesses. People can own, parents have parental rights over their kids. So based on that, like, if all of those things are true, Japan is not a socialist country in the way that socialists in the United States define socialism. So there may be a difference in definition that we're talking about. But again, what you need to understand is that the definition that socialists in the United States have is really, really, really specific, which is about private property ownership. And so in Japan, if they can own their own homes, if they can own their own cars, if they have parental rights over their kids, if they can own businesses, then that's not going to qualify under the left's definition of socialism in America.
For you, and suddenly that gets encompassed into the family's dynamic, right? Like if it's my family, it's okay. It's kind of the name of the game, right? And then I've met or known people who have very liberal families who are pro all things liberal, but it's the opposite. It's like, yeah, but not in my family. Like, that's fine for those people, and I support them, but that's not coming into my house, you know? So people get surprised by these alternative identity pieces all the time. My favorite though is always when people find that their grandparents are so accepting. They think grandparents are old and conservative, they'll never understand anything. And they're like the first people who go, oh, I love you anyway, you know? And that's just so endearing. Y'all set? Thank you for listening.
I think that's it.
Do you have anything you want to close on?
Nope. Thanks for listening. Feel free to contact me if you have more questions.
All right.
Post questions on.
I guess that is the end of our non-monogamous relationship presentation from the University of Minnesota. So we learned, I think that the most valuable part of that presentation, honestly, was not that one. The most valuable part of that presentation was this slide right here, where they listed off all of the different types of relationships and all the different ways they're trying to queer the family. So that was probably the most valuable part of the presentation for me. I think that like the biggest picture that I want people to understand is that, first of all, this is being taught. This was in 2017, guys. This has been taught for a long, long time. And I bet you this isn't the only taxpayer-funded university in the world to be teaching this type of thing to students. I'm not necessarily opposed to non-traditional relationships, but I want people to understand that the reason they're teaching this is for the express purpose of queering the nuclear family, because they want to abolish the nuclear family, because they don't think they can get rid of capitalism unless they abolish the nuclear family. And so one of these subversive tactics that the left uses is to push these ideas through classes, through trainings, through policies, through laws, et cetera, to make things that are going to be advantageous to them seem beneficial. That's the biggest message that I want people to understand today, is that it's about the laws, the policies, and then they use boring training things like this in order to teach their ideas out to people, so that they're more likely to adopt those ideas, so that they're more likely to get ultimately what they want, in this case, to queer the nuclear family, to destabilize it, so that they can make non-traditional relationships or families of choice the norm, which is what they need to do to get rid of the nuclear family and thus get rid of capitalism. Does everyone understand that? Does anyone have any questions? We got a couple extra minutes. And if not, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. Please do make sure to mount the like button on the way out the door. And as a reminder, guys, tomorrow, bright and early, at 9:30 in the morning, we are doing our first spy stream of 2024. I will be sending out to all of my supporters the information to be able to join the spy stream live. We are going to be watching a live woke training from a major city government about sexuality and gender. And so if you want to see what they're teaching when they think you're not listening, this is going to be an excellent opportunity for that. If you're not able to join us at 9:30 tomorrow because it's way too early for that shit, I understand. I'm going to have to get up out of bed early. I'm not happy about it. It will be available on demand for you later, so you don't have to join live if you don't want to, but you do have to be a supporter. And the way you become a supporter is by heading off to, well, ask it, offensive saying. We're about to wrap up. Go ahead, ask. The way you become a supporter is by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com. And sign up as a paying supporter for $8 a month or $80 a year. And as a benefit, when you do that, you are going to be able to access my community supporter call that's going to start in about 20 minutes. These are private, unrecorded Zooms that all of my supporters get access to, where we talk about whatever we want to talk about. It's a great little support group. I definitely encourage everyone to join if you haven't had the opportunity to. The place you find that, again, is over on the Substack. Look for the Unwoke Roundup, the thing that says find supporter perks, Zoom and Discord link here. And then you go to this message and you scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath this here red box, you will find the community Zoom links that we're going to be using this week. You will find your link to the supporter Discord. So make sure you come and join us in there for writers group, movie night. We're going to start doing a lot more stuff in the supporter Discord moving forward. So I want to make sure everyone gets in there. And the only way to access that is by becoming a supporter on the Substack or on Locals or any of the other places as well. But I prefer Substack because that's the way it goes. Offensive Saint, we're not going to have this conversation today. I am very sorry. We are not in any way going to have this conversation today. Or probably ever. Ask Nick. That's a great question that you can ask Nick. Why don't you send Nick a super chat and be like, Nick, can you explain the difference between National Socialism and the socialism in the United States that Carlyn talks about all the time? Honestly, I'd be really curious about his answer to that. So ask Nick to explain the difference, and then if Nick explains the difference to you, I will critique Nick's answer and I will say whether he's right or wrong, which I'm sure he would really appreciate. Anyway, guys, that is all I've got for right now. I will see my supporters in about 20 minutes, and I will be back tomorrow at 9:30, bright and early for Spy Stream. We'll do our regular 5 p.m. stream tomorrow as well. And then, of course, nothing remotely controversial at 9:30 tomorrow night. I hope you guys all have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.